You all set? Okay. It is 4 p.m. on Thursday, October 8th, 2020. This is a regular monthly meeting of the Augsburg Bridge and Port Authority. I call this meeting to order. Mr. Lawrence, any letters or communications to the board?
Not at this time.
Okay. Approve of the board minutes of September 10th, 2020. Anne Marie, do you know if Mr. King has reviewed those?
Yes, yes,
I believe I signed off on them too.
yes.
And there were no changes. Is there a motion to approve the board minutes of September 10th, 2020?
I'll move that. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So carried. Presentations and reports. Mr. Coffin, Finance Committee report.
The Finance Committee routinely meets on the last Monday of a given month. We met on September 28th, and I think that it's important to have Patty go over the financial information with the entire board. There were a few things that I noted as action plans that came out of our discussion. And Patty, you can check me and see whether or not I understood correctly, and, whether we're in agreement. We've made a plan to post interest expense as it accrues on some bonds. We have been posting it as it was paid, and since we've delayed payment on some things, the interest hasn't been accumulating. It looks as if we're running below budget. It's not the case. Secondly, our financial statements, including the one that we have for this month, show grant income as a revenue on the financial statements, but because essentially all the grant projects are capital projects, as soon as the expenditures are made, they're moved to a depreciable asset and no longer show in the expense column. So you see, the way we're dealing with it now, revenue, but we don't see expense. So I believe that there will be separate reports on essentially project revenue and expenditures. And revenue will no longer show in our general statements. And there are a couple of areas where we are over budget. For instance, in employee benefits, we have decided that we just need to budget higher next year. There's no question about those. And it looks as if the same is true of legal fees. We need to look into legal fees and probably end up budgeting more for those. Those are my notes.
Those are what I have, yes. And we are going to do a kilowatt per hour times the kilowatts used to see how much the solar is costing us compared to not having it.
Mm-hmm.
While we would continue to have it because it is an alternate source of energy and a more green source, we wanted to get a better idea of whether it's actually saving us that 7%, which always seems to be the number that's thrown around.
So, Patty, if you would present the financial statements, I would really appreciate it.
Okay. We can start, if anyone, if no one minds, we'll start with the statement of financial position, which shows our assets and our liabilities. The accounts receivable, which is the fourth line down on our assets, is quite high at 1.2. Right now, of that 1.2 that's outstanding, 1.1 million belongs to the wind turbine project. All of that money is due to come in the next probably 8 weeks. Hopefully, they stay on schedule. So our accounts receivable is really not a concern at this point, and Kathy in the office keeps on top of the industrial park rentals, and if somebody's getting behind, she makes the phone call to see what's going on.
Could I interrupt for just a
Sure.
second? Anne Marie, could you help me get to the financial statements on this screen?
Our fixed assets are as they appear there. That is everything that we depreciate over time. It's all the land, the buildings, higher cost machinery, any of our vehicles, furniture and fixtures that reaches a certain amount of money. There's certain signs that we have are depreciated, and then the depreciation. So our net fixed assets are at 81 million. Construction in progress, that is all of the grant work that's going on that will go directly to fixed assets when the project is completed. If you look at our current liabilities, our accounts payable is at 1.7. Of that, wind turbine project monies account for approximately 625,000 of that. So that brings our accounts payable to the level of about 1 to 1.1 million. Our debt is there, and that pretty much takes care of our financial position or balance sheet. Any questions specific to? Okay, if we go to the income statements. The bridge fund. Our bridge tolls are up over what we had budgeted, but we've been very lucky with the truck traffic that's kept the tolls up. Our rental income is a little bit below what we projected in the budget. The probable cause for that is duty-free pays us a percentage of sales every month. And with duty-free closed, they will only pay us their minimum payment at the end of the year, depending on what's left that hasn't been paid through the percentage of sales. So we will not see our duty-free money until duty-free opens up again. Other income is a majority of advertising income, and we haven't had any advertising income come in for the sign here by the bridge. There just hasn't been the traffic to be asking people to advertise. Our salaries and wages are on target. Payroll taxes and benefits, as Chris said, were budgeted very low, unfortunately. So we will have to be very conscious of that when we budget for 2021.
Patty, the payroll taxes and benefits, is the windmill project figured into that?
No.
Okay.
Actually, it will on the port side.
Okay.
And as Chris mentioned, the interest has not been accrued under our interest expense. We just received our bill from Tompkins, and it's back on there. And I was actually asked yesterday why the interest expense was so high, and I said, well, remember, we haven't paid it. So it will show up on next month's statements.
Mm-hmm.
Bridge maintenance, we're trying to keep those expenses only to what is necessary, so we are currently under budget. Our general expenses are high. We are at, we should be at 42% of our budgeted income for legal, which would be at $37,000 right now. We are currently at $77,000. And as Chris mentioned, I am doing a workup of last year and so far this year, and we're actually going to look at what makes up those numbers, whether the items are, say, employee-related, grant-related, other issues, not getting into specifics, but give you a general idea of how the legal money is being spent. Then we have our depreciation, and at the bottom, it shows you if we did not have the PPP, where we would be year-to-date, we would be approximately 859,000 in the hole. Then the port fund has the airport, the industrial park, the marine terminal, and the railroad. So first, I just give you a quick shot of what's happening for August, and then the second sheet for the port fund shows the budget to actual at this point. And under revenue, you will see the line for grants that Chris and I discussed with the finance committee of taking off. It somewhat skews our income, making it look as though we have a great deal more income when we don't. It's not usable income for anything we'd like. The CARES Act, you'll see for the month of August is $110,000.
Okay. I'll let him in.
Year-to-date, we are
Or maybe not.
at about $750,000 for the CARES Act. In the expenses, you will see the industrial park has a $17,000 utility bill. The industrial park receives the bill for the solar power. I don't know why the industrial park was chosen, but it was chosen as the place to put the solar. And if we look on the next page at our actual versus budget, the rental income overage can be attributed to Veritas, who bought out their lease, so they had a one-time payment to us, which brought our income a little higher than it normally would have. Our fuel sales and fare charges, of course, are down. We're not doing as many the flights aren't there over the course of the year. Port operating and rental fees, part of that, salt was budgeted to begin arriving in August. It didn't start until September. And then we found that there were some items, such as wood pellets, that were budgeted to come in, and that was a one-time deal last year. So it appears that the budget was overstated on port income. The wind turbine project is really a timing issue. The grants, again, are coming off. And here you'll see the CARES Act is at $742 for the year so far. That has allowed us to keep a lot of the airport expenses in check. The overage in expenses under salaries and wages, we paid the longshoremen. We had some additional expenses with that, so our wages are up under the port fund. Payroll and taxes and benefits sort of offsets the overage from the other side. Again, we're trying to keep our expenses down, so your maintenance expenses are a bit lower. Our utilities, the utilities assumed in the prior budget to be lower because we have the solar, but I don't think it was considered that we pay for the solar. So that was left off, and that will continue to increase the utility bill there.
But you realize that on the solar part, it's seasonal, or you pay for less solar power during the winter because you're getting less. So it's kind of the opposite of when we're active in the summer, in the winter time, right? So, yeah.
I'm sorry, don't we still receive somewhat of a smaller charge than we ordinarily would without the solar?
Yes, we have a credit with National Grid, and that will continue to be used up over the course of the rest of the year. So that could take us well into January. And then we'll see very little solar coming in, but then we'll be back to paying full utility bills.
Thank you.
Our change in net assets right now for August and year-to-date, we're okay. The depreciation brings us down. And then without the CARES Act, we would be $954,000 in the red.
Thank you, Senator Schumer.
Yes.
Any questions on any part of this that I can help?
Thank you, Patty. I like the breakdown, the format.
Oh, thank you.
Really helpful.
And Dave, I did call this Brenda. I have not yet heard back from her from the new Veen, but I am reaching out to her
Okay.
again.
Sorry, it was later, I found that out. Thank
I
you.
think this covers what I have to report unless there are questions.
Anyone have any questions of Chris or Patty? Tony, good? Yeah,
Looks good.
Megan?
Almost set.
Dave? Or
Good.
You sit on finance too, so. All right, let's move on. To, let's see, we're over the income and expense report. Let's move on to the bridge traffic report, Mr. Mark.
There is a little bit of good news in that, the major one is truck traffic is almost, it's 5% down over last year, which that can occur in the normal year. So,
Impressive.
so that, I'd almost feel, I'm not gonna say for sure, but it feels normal there anyway. And then, if you'll notice, we've come off that 91 we've been stuck on for percentage on vehicles. And all I know is, I heard that on the US side there, they were, trying to loosen things up for business a little bit. So that's reflected in September's number there at 85, which it's something. It's probably the best I've heard on bridge traffic in 6 months, so, it's encouraging. And then we're hearing different rumors of things with snowbirds, and then even with the Thanksgiving holiday in Canada, and then, what other things there that maybe that might, break free a little bit there, but there's no, no one's talked about any planned opening with anybody yet, so we figure once you hear that kind of talk, then they're getting serious, so,
Thanksgiving is Monday, eh?
yes.
Yes.
And then from the news that I see, there's been an increase in cases in Ontario and Quebec. So unfortunately, I don't think that bodes well for anything major happening. I think, Steve, you and I talked about this in May and June, that we thought it really wouldn't be until January when the borders actually opened up. And then it's how long is it gonna be before everyone feels comfortable to go one way or the other, so.
Yeah, what that rate of return to normal will be, or normal, I say even close. The one thing that's encouraging is that commercial traffic will, it will probably get back to where it was, but for passengers, I have no idea whether that, you might see 60% for 3 or 4 months, and then 40, and then it may stay at 25% for a good part of next year.
So I bet business traffic will be restored, salesmen and things like that.
Right,
But,
essentially, yeah.
People going to Ottawa for a movie, they'll go to Potsdam.
Right, and the same goes for them, yeah, on that side.
Yeah, I can even go up to a hockey game, that's not right. Can't even go to the Clarkson game, I know you wouldn't go, but.
No.
Then they gotta play before you can go.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I would just like to be in Chio. I like the popcorn. And anything else, Steve?
No, that's it on bridge traffic.
Okay, the airport activity and occupancy report? Steve, you gonna do that or Stephanie?
Stephanie, go ahead. Go
Okay,
ahead.
unfortunately, the activity report isn't that good. I see that this did not translate well. We had about 296 in-plane passengers for the month of September that came through. Still very low. SkyWest flies every day, flies their regular schedule, but we have very few passengers. A lot of that I attribute to the quarantine states across the United States and folks just not traveling. Unfortunately, Allegiant was due to start their flights October 3rd, and I got word this morning they have canceled every flight for the month of October now. They just do not have the passengers. The bookings, the early bookings look good, but after, what was it, the 21st of September, when Canada announced that they would not be opening the border, cancellations came in left and right. So today they canceled all the flights for the month of October. The next flight out is the 7th of November. They are also doing another hiatus, January 2nd through February 11th. And after February 11th, they will start the St. Petersburg Clearwater flights again. Hopefully, we'll get some traffic at that point. The occupancy report has not changed at all from last month. We do have a couple of hangar leases that are coming due, but people seem to have some difficulty with getting their leases taken care of. As far as I know, they're paying their rent, all but one, who will be, Steve, will be handled tomorrow. And they've given me every indication that they intend to stay. It's just that they haven't gotten their leases back to us yet for the final administrative part. Not very good news as far as the traffic goes, and I have no idea when it's going to get better, but we're just like everyone else. Our traffic is down just about the same as every other airport in the nation. No better, no worse.
Do you think the announced layoffs at Disney will have an effect on Allegiant?
I think so. That's my personal opinion, but yes. And the layoffs, American Airlines is going through with their 19,000 layoffs. United, 13,000 layoffs. Delta was a little bit proactive with early retirements and separation packages, and they've already let go 17,000. And depending upon what happens in Washington with a new CARES Act or a HEALS Act or a HEROES Act or whatever act they're going to do today, remains to be seen.
It'd be nice if they quit acting and actually do something.
Is there any airport that's having success in getting business back anywhere,
Dallas Fort Worth.
and why?
Because American Airlines made the decision early on to continue flying, and they added flights to the busiest destinations. At one point during this pandemic, they were the busiest airport in the world. Now that Texas, for the last month or so, has really been hit hard, I don't know if they're still doing as well, but that was really the only airport that was doing anything positive. I've heard some real negative stories about other airports right now. It's pretty sad, what they're having to do and shutting down, actually.
I guess I'm just wondering if anybody's having some success or is there something we can glean from that to maybe, turn around our numbers, which I realize are related to the pandemic, but.
Right, as I said early on, Dallas-Fort Worth, people were still traveling to and from Dallas-Fort Worth. Texas took a typical Texas stance on the pandemic early on, and so they continued flying, they continued working, people were going to Texas, flying out of Texas. And Americans' choice of business to move their aircraft from the slower destinations and doubling up on the more popular destinations really helped. And they were one of the first to start pulling their airplanes out of storage and back into service. But I have heard that there's one state airport in New York State that might be shutting down due to all of this. Don't know if it's 100% true or not, but it's not looking good.
Anything else? Anything else, Stephanie?
Would you like a report on the EAS?
We could talk about that later.
Okay.
Anyone else have any other questions for Stephanie? Before we move on to the board activity report?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the windmill project is complete, and everything that completed the end of September, so everything's out of there except for the large crane, and then all our billing's been done. We totaled everything up, we're in pretty good shape there. It's just a matter of getting cash flow out of the project, and that's on a 60-day payment, and that's just starting 1st of October, and we'll probably see that right through October and November, which is much needed. We paid a lot of payrolls ourselves, so that money will come back and reimburse us for that to use it other parts. You'll see on the activity report, you'll see in there that on the for the grain part, that Lansing and Ingridion are based on. Ingridion is really our major shipper and supplier of grain, but Lansing's really picked things up, and one of the things that they've is, you see SHP, that's soy hull pellets. We did a quick numbers thing on them, and they've been quite successful since we got them in here in early spring, and they've just been adding more and more product. They've got 3 products in there, which when they first came in, I think we started with canola, and then they realized, I guess through rail, that it's been successful for them. So they've been asking questions about other products. So we're hoping if we could get Lansing up to the same amount, similar to what Ingridion goes, that would be a pretty good, and that's usually pretty steady all year long. So you can see how that's really increased over last month. And then you'll see we're starting salt again. We have a contract with American Rock Salt, that's ARS, and we started unloading rail cars there, and each rail car is about 100 tons, and I think we're up over 14,000 tons, and they're expected to bring in 45,000 I believe by the middle of December, so everything's be shipped here, but that could change. And then we've shipped out, as of last week, 1,800 tons, but that's a new, we've had them before, but it's been a 6 or 7 year, haven't been using us, and this year, we were able to get a contract with them, and they have they seem to have a lot of faith in us, because, you know, we know how to move salt and where to move it to, so, that'll continue, the unloading and loading will continue through, December on the, road salt. And then we do expect one more vessel in with, somewhere between 18 and 20,000 of salt, and that salt will be, we'll have a new product there, where we'll mix it with with a chemical that lowers the temperature at which you can use that salt. So that's a value-added product that we've never had before, but we'll be putting that in the long, building number 2, it's our longer one. We're gonna put so much of a batch at one time, and then process it, and then it goes out. Apparently, what I'm told is it goes out just before big storms, because a lot of the municipalities don't have they can't mingle it with other salts, so they want to just take it as they need it. So it just goes out in batches. So we figure on making 6,000 to 7,000 ton batches at a time, have it ready, and ship it out. So there'll be a lot of activity when the winter weather really hits.
Steve,
So,
a question for me?
yes.
I know that traffic like green traffic and salt traffic generates revenue for the authority. Can you give me an idea of how that's charged and how's the revenue generated?
So, you want to start with the ships and how they?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, we have a contract, and once that product is in 8 or 10 hours, once it's dropped on there's a revenue charge just all in for them for storage and everything at one time, and we bill them for that. And then we can decide if it's okay right where it's at. We just work out of that, loading out. And then if not, and if it's in our way for other things, then out of that charge there, it's on us to move it where we want to. So the more efficient we are, it's better for everybody.
Absolutely.
It's better, the less we have to handle that. But sometimes you may say the revenue from a new product is needed in that location, and you just have to make that call. So that's generally how salt brought in by the ship works.
Mhm.
And then we get paid, on the other end of it, we get paid once it's loaded. There's a charge for loading and weighing.
Mhm.
So as every ton goes out, at the end of a week, most of those salt companies are set up automatically. So they each have a system in our scale house, and as that goes out, they just send us a check based on what we've shipped out for that week. So it's ongoing, so they're good payers, the salt companies. Then with ARS, it's similar, but it's coming in on rail. And the advantage they have over ships is that if we have a really tough winter, they may say, well, we want to put 40,000 in Ogdensburg. Well, maybe 40,000 is gone by the middle of January or later. They can always ship to us. So that's the advantage of having them. They can either ship by rail or by truck, because
Sure.
it's Retzhoff's just outside of Ithaca.
Mhm.
So they have shipped by truck before, but they own all these rail cars, so they move them all around the Northeast. And if we needed more salt, because they make a commitment to all of their customers that they will carry 20% more. They're on the hook to carry 20% more if needed. So if someone uses up their allotment and they say, I need 20% more of my allotment, they're required to have that.
Mhm.
And so that kind of takes in for a tough winter on that. Did I answer everything on that?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Steve, on the SHP, how is that coming in?
That's coming in by rail.
From?
I think it's in the Midwest. I want to say either Michigan or Illinois. And I'm not certain, but I
Likely,
that sounds right?
somewhere.
If it's increasing, I'm just speculating or looking for information, is that something that's changed locally with farmers?
Oh, No,
No?
most of this grain's not going out direct to farms, it's going to mills. So it's
It's either being blended with,
very seldom can I call Lansing and buy grain for a customer. It goes through the proper channels, so.
yeah, they're almost like a wholesaler, yeah.
It's a wholesaler, they're just moving it closer, so they're bringing, I assume, I don't know what you're getting, probably 5 or 10 cars or something probably.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not a
The
shift
drought,
in
the
way we
drought
do
locally
things?
may have created some need for some soils, but not too big a one, I don't believe.
Okay.
So that's not an overly demanded product, is it?
Everything's all determined on price, so soils are relatively cheap, the crush has been big, but
Can you answer a question for me? I follow This Week in Agriculture on Channel 7 every Sunday, and it's kind of been up and down as to where the world market. Does it settle down a little bit?
no, the markets are high. You mean price of grain?
Yes.
Yeah, price of grain's high. Corn is not crazy, but soy, the market kind of flows on corn and soy. Soy's high, and there's lots of speculation why, but, Trump's deal of whatever he had, there was some sort of a trade agreement, right, so they had to buy some soy, so speculation on it.
But that will, either it tumbles down to where it does affect our business.
Well, it does, because of the price, you find alternatives at the price that soy's at right now. At least my farmers, were looking for alternatives.
And how about like flat storage, is that, is that something that is peaking in this area or anything like that
Flat storage for
grain?
farms?
For, no, for suppliers, like